Speaking with my freedom of expression or action, like Johnny says, I walk the line. With 3 hearts in a cot and a lot of talk, would lock up concrete and steel. There's a lesson to be learned here, but what a price to pay. You know, I may never learn. Oh, I'm prison bound. I did a crime one too many times. It's on the outskirts of town, by the railroad tracks, where the country moonshine.
And welcome to Uncarcerated. I'm Lee Scott. I'm your host each and every week as we talk to individuals as they return home from various institutions and re-enter society. Take a hardcore look at our criminal justice system. Each week, we'll kind of let the guest take us where they want to. I want this to be as natural and organic as possible. I'm going to edit it as little as possible, so there's going to be things on the show that you maybe disagree with culturally, or there may be sensitive things we discuss on this show. Definitely cover the kids' ears. All you got to do is say earmuffs. Earmuffs, that's fine. You can say whatever you want, you know. But I don't want to clean the show up and shift the narrative from what the guest wants us to discuss. So it may get personal, and I'll get into that in a second. We're going to take a look at the sort of societal ills that get us into these messes. If people want to take personal responsibility, we definitely encourage that for this space. We want this to be cathartic, but we also want honesty. If you couldn't afford an attorney, and you know if you paid to play and you'd still be free, we need to have that discussion. Why is our legal system based on how much money you have? You know, we're going to take a look at that. I want to hear from that. If you feel like you got a judge in the South that was a million-year judge, one of these judges that doesn't look at things case by case but is more interested on handing out millions of years, we want to look at that. This show is definitely not for the people who think, do the crime, you got to do the time. This is not for you, okay? There are spaces for that. There's spaces in our legal system, in society, finding salvation in spirituality. There's places to make amends and ask for forgiveness. And there's spaces for the victims of various crimes. We may have people on the show who there's another side to this. Somebody was hurt, either through violence or drug sales or their neighborhood or their children by proxy. Family and friends were let down. There are victims, but this space is supposed to be a cathartic area for people to get their story out, take some responsibility, do some healing, rehumanize themselves, give them a voice, and also take a look at where our criminal justice system is failing. The United States leads the world in incarcerated individuals. The freest country in the world. We have a problem. And so I want us to take a look at that. Then, once we're past the sentencing portion, once people are in prison, where's the Department of Corrections failing? Why are we misusing resources to warehouse people? Why are we misusing taxpayer dollars so that we can get free labor out of inmates, so the Department of Transportation can build free roads? I mean, if that's our goal as a society, if that's what we've collectively agreed on, that we want to foot the bill to warehouse people and have them do free labor, I want to know how it's contributing to the recidivism rate. Is it making people worse? Is it creating dangerous situations? I can tell you from experience that I was in the Department of Corrections in Florida, and I was sent out on a Department of Transportation work squad every single day, put in some of the most dangerous situations I've ever been put in my life, with a weed eater on the side of I-75, debris flying right and left, alligators, snakes. Did I deserve that? Did I deserve to be worked half to death? And you're threatened, if you don't work, you're threatened with the box. So think about these Florida prisons that are 100 degrees, in January. Now, crank that up about 20 degrees, and you're isolated, no visitors, no phone calls, no mail, by yourself because you refuse to put yourself in a dangerous situation so that some major corporation can make money. There's multi-million-dollar contracts signed by the Department of Transportation, and they're profiting off of free inmate labor. some judges and state's attorneys here in the state of Florida, I know this for a fact, sit on the boards from some of those companies. There's a warehouse, a Pride warehouse is what it's called, and this company is at various institutions all over the state of Florida. They make uniforms, they make mattresses, pillows. You know, think back like inmates making license plates. Sort of take that idea. You don't get paid. You work in this warehouse, and there's judges and attorneys that sit on the boards for this company, so they have a vested interest in sending people to prison. So that's the other part of this show. We want to take a look at where in the Department of Corrections are we failing to have such a high recidivism rate. And then the back end of the show, we really want to look at what's it like to be uncarcerated? What's it like to come home? And we're going to take a look at that tonight with my friend Daniel. We did part 1 of this episode, and it got super emotional, and it kind of really just took us through Daniel's childhood and childhood trauma and divorce, drug addiction, alcohol use. And, you know, again, he did a great job at being able to take responsibility for the things that he felt responsible for. He didn't want to blame his family. Oh, I did this because my mom did this. But it definitely had an influence on him. And that just creates inner conflict for yourself. You want to love your parents, and then there comes that moment in all of our lives where you see that they're not perfect. And if they were lying to me about this, what the hell else were they lying to me about? You know, how do you deal with that? And how do you deal with that with the magnifying glass of probation or the Department of Corrections, or having to deal with an addiction? How do you do that? So tonight, we're going to do part 2 with Daniel. We're going to take a look at his trip to work release as he comes home from prison, and then what his life's looked like now that he's been home for a little bit. So we really appreciate you listening. I do want to touch on this news story before we get to Daniel, though. This is just from a few days ago. It's from Florida, but we'll do various institutional stories throughout the country. Of course, if you have a personal story that you'd like to share, if you have a family member that you'd like to get on the show, or if you have a news story, you know, if you have somebody that you know, a loved one that's in the Department of Corrections and is suffering in there, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. You can message us, Reentry Pod on Facebook, at Uncarcerated on Twitter. Message me there. mlscottblog@gmail.com. That's mlscottblog@gmail.com if you'd like to email us and get on the show or share your story with us. But this is just from a few days ago. A lawsuit has been settled in which 15 women alleged sexual abuse at a Florida prison. The United States has settled a lawsuit with 15 women who said correctional officers at a federal prison in Florida repeatedly sexually abused them. The lawsuit contended that the Bureau of Prisons officers at the federal correctional complex in Sumter sexually abused female inmates for years and threatened the women if they didn't comply. The women feared that if they came forward, they'd be sent to another federal facility far from their families, and of course other punitive issues if they didn't comply. Settlements were approved by the Attorney General's office Monday. 3 of the women received $1.26 million between them. I'm sure that'll be hung up in litigation for many, many years as they appeal. You know, it's not enough. It's never going to replace the time and the dignity and the autonomy over their bodies that they lost. They're going to be suffering for the rest of their lives from this. So it's just a drop in the bucket. And James DeMiles, Brian Bush, who represented Levin Williams, and Phil Riesenstein, who represented one woman, said they did not want to comment on the settlement until funds were released. 6 of the 8 accused officers admitted to having sexual contact with the inmates, according to the July document. They were not fired, though. They retired or resigned, and some still receive benefits from federal employment. Sexually abused women that you have trapped in a cage, threaten them with further issues if they don't comply. Oh, and guess what? Yeah, go home, go retire, receive your benefits. It's just ridiculous. And this kind of stuff goes all the time in the Department of Corrections. Inmates are abused and killed, and those prison guards are not fired, but instead sent to other institutions. So please keep your eyes open for those kinds of stories, and if you have anything, please send them to us right here on Uncarcerated. Okay, part 2 of our Daniel interview. right now.
Breaking the law, we used to break the law. Breaking the law, we used to break the law. Breaking the law, we used to break the law. Breaking the law, we used to break the law. I got no money, not a penny in the bank. I got no freedom, spend my whole life in that stand. And I don't know where I'm going, where I'll go. And I don't care that I sold off all my clothes.
And welcome back to Uncarcerated. I'm Lee Scott. I'm your host. Fortunate enough to be joined by my buddy Daniel for part 2. We did episode 1. Make sure you go to Uncarcerated and listen to the first episode. You can kind of follow the story along. We were fortunate enough to have him come in for a really raw emotional exposure to his childhood, drugs and alcohol involved there, a divorce, all the way up through his first incarceration and the work release experience. And we're going to get into his next incarceration and sort of like where some pivotal turns happen for him. And then, of course, we want to focus on his journey home as well. Daniel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be here. So yeah, I was released. Just to briefly recap, I was released from prison. I had some money saved up from work release, and it was immediately gone. Like, not even a week or two. It was completely spent. I was released back to my mom's house, who had a history of drug and alcohol abuse, and at this time, unbeknownst to me, she had been into crack. So it was it's only a matter of time. Obviously, I did some terrible, illegal activities. Judged and pushed by my mom, literally set up to do it. So, needless to say, I wind up back in prison. Not even a year out. And this time, I was given an option, and they asked me if I wanted to go to a faith-based program, and I was told that there are a lot of different classes that you can take that are offered there, and they're not offered at any other prison. So I figured I'm going to be here for 4.5 years. I might as well try and give myself a leg up, and so I filled out to go to that prison. That's where I met Lee. And while I was there, I was made to take modality, which is a drug abuse and substance abuse program. It's counseling for that, and it's 6 months. It's a 6-month program that you go to, and it's for what it was, and for the funding, and it was actually a pretty good program. You had some people, obviously, that were there that didn't want to be there. And then there were people there that were trying to do right. That's where I met Lee. I met a buddy of ours, Mac, and a couple really, really awesome people. I was very fortunate to be there and to meet these guys, because I feel like they're definitely integral in my staying out of trouble, finding the right lifestyle and the right way to live my life. So we're at this camp, and we take a drug treatment program, and they offer all kinds. There's the one Toastmasters, where it's a public speaking program. We were all involved in that. There's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is another program that they offer. A lot of really, really good, but that is the only camp in Florida that does that. Out of 170-something prisons. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, so I want to expound on that a little bit, because your Florida experience in the Department of Corrections is atypical. The normal experience, the philosophy, and we touched on earlier, in Florida is warehouse people and then try to make as much money off of free labor as possible. It dates back to the Florida pine tar camps and Jim Crow laws and the Chattahoochee State Mental Hospital. We'll delve into all that stuff historically as we move forward in this show, but there's a steep history in Florida of locking up poor people, locking up people of color, and then forcing them into labor.
Undesirables.
And so, this prison in Florida, the name of the prison is Lottie, and it's right outside of the Triangle. And the Triangle, of course, is Union and Florida State Prison and Rayford. And that's some of the most dangerous prisons in the United States. some of the most horror stories you're going to hear is out of the triangle. Well, just outside of that triangle is Lottie. Now, the idea of Lottie is if you behave yourself in your first couple years at your first dangerous prison, if you run the gauntlet, you have no disciplinary referrals, you haven't been beaten up, you haven't been killed. If you do all those things perfectly, if you walk this PTSD tightrope, then maybe if you apply, we're not going to throw it out there to you, but if you ask and you apply, we'll send you to this prison. And originally, Jeb Bush signed this thing into law when he was governor of Florida to make this a faith-based camp. So basically, you go there, and it's character-based. You try to behave yourself. You go to church. There's some extra religious programming. Visitation with your family is increased. However, while we were there, we happened to be there at this just absolute right time where there was a former doctor who was in there from Jacksonville who was sentenced for being involved with pill mills. There was a former attorney from the St. Pete area, myself and one other guy, and this sort of like brain trust got together and said, the recidivism rate is off the charts. If you want to participate in spiritual programming, that's fine, but if you're secular or an atheist or agnostic, or let's say you want to do both, just finding God is obviously not cutting it. And I don't want to upset anybody who's out there that's listening that's spiritual, but obviously we're saying that God or, spirituality should be at the center of a lot of things you do. And if you don't want it to be, how do you find character and how do you find morality and ethics in other ways? So we got together and we designed some programming that the administrators happened to let us enact. So myself, the doctor, and the attorney, and another guy got together and we designed a philosophy and leadership class that was based on a lot of the leaders throughout history. So each week you'd go in and you learn a different leadership style. You learn business management, you learn philosophy. A small business course was given, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. We were able to design and enact all of that, but that was inmate run. Like, we're the ones that came up with that, and we're the ones that taught it. So it was a really special time, but, that's the kind of stuff that really should be readily available throughout prison.
Absolutely. While I was there, I actually got my ITWD degree. I was actually made a tutor of the class, and it's a legitimate, college ITWD degree. But yeah, I was made a tutor. Computer programming. Yeah, they teach you HTML, XHTML, CSS. You learn how to run Dreamweaver, Photoshop, all this stuff. And it's an awesome course. And I was very fortunate to end up at this camp at this integral time when so many programs were launching off, and not just educational, but like I said, faith-based, character-based, things to help motivational speaking, things like that. Like, just there was a plethora of different things that you could take and learn to better yourself in new ways.
We also played a lot of Scrabble, hence the word plethora.
Yeah, plethora. Yep. Yeah. A lot of Scrabble.
So you're there and you meet some people, and did you feel like, Daniel, that there was, this is going to be a deeper, more abstract question, did you feel like you had an aha moment where things really clicked for you, or did you feel like I'm faking it to make it and I can kind of manipulate some people into getting by with my charm, or both things? And the reason I ask that is because in 7 Habits, the whole point of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits is that there are character-based people, and that's one ethical, philosophical style, which is I do everything I do based on 10 or 15 principles. And then there's sort of like the Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins ethical style, which is not character-based. It's personality-based. And you'll find a lot of inmates have charm and they have a way with words, but they don't have the ethical style to back it up, and they feel like having ethics and character is dangerous. It puts them in the position of being called a snitch. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering if, like, you had one foot in, one foot out, or where did the light come on that you wanted to immerse yourself in self-betterment?
Honestly, I
had
already no. Great question. Here's the thing, though. Is let's not kid ourselves. We are still in prison. you know, you are still in an environment, and even though, you know, it was a faith and character based program that we were at, like, you know, that there was still, you know, some terrible things that happened there.
Yeah.
You know, and this is a program where you send the good people. So, you know, you're still in an environment, and in an environment like that, if you're going to survive, you have to, you know, you kind of have to dance that line. But in my heart and my mind and where I was set on, I was trying to do everything that I could differently than the time I did before, so that I gave myself a better chance to succeed when I got out. I wanted to learn everything that I could. I wanted to give myself as many options as I could. And I think that's one thing that a lot of guys in prison do. Like, they'll put their eggs in one basket. You'll hear them. It's, I got this job lined up, and you know, man, this girl I've been talking to, and it's like, it's not like that. Things happen, life happens, and you forget about that when you're in there and you're doing the same routine every day, same exact thing day in and day out. And so, like, I just wanted to give myself as many chances as I could, and I wanted to improve. I wanted to be better. I didn't have the mentality of I was trying to get over. I was trying to, you know, am I a charming guy? Absolutely. Did I use my charms? Did I use what I have to get what I wanted? Absolutely. But
Do
what
I
wanted,
asking myself questions and then answering them?
Absolutely. Sure. But was my moral compass pointed in the wrong direction? No. I was trying to do the right thing and learn, grow. You know, and you know, guys like you directly influence that, man. Like you, I owe you a lot. You just giving me the direction that you did and being the person that you are, you know, it gave me something to watch and to try and, I don't want to say emulate, but, you know, I should drop some of these things that I'm doing and pick up some of the habits that, you know, because I see that it you know, it works for you.
Well, I mean, I appreciate you saying that, but I gotta let you in and sort of like peek behind the curtain here. As I was helping design some of these courses, I would spend hours and hours and hours like reading and learning questions and figuring out who the audience was. And sometimes I would have a class of like 150 people, and like you'd have guys from all walks of life, all age range, all demographics, and a lot of them are just staring at you with angry faces. Like, what does this dude have to tell me about my life?
Cracker gonna say.
Yeah. What does this cracker have to say about my life? And, you know, I still tried to navigate that. And here is...
But you did it extremely well.
Well, and that's what I was going to get. I really appreciate you saying that. But you know what the sad sort of... and I don't know if you know this, but I talked to administrators frequently. People who were involved with the modality drug program, people who were prison officials, outside people. And I heard this several times. Why do you care so much? These guys are just going to be back here. Don't worry about it so much. Most of these guys
aren't. The reason why.
Right. Most of these guys aren't listening. And I remember looking at one counselor in particular, and I was like, if I go through my life, sure, can I find all the evidence that like this guy doesn't care and he's telling me one thing and then he goes and does something different, or he's going to be back? Sure, you can find all that evidence you want. But if you wake up every day thinking that people are unreachable, then why do you even do anything? I don't think there's one person on this planet that is unreachable.
I think something else that just kind of hit me too, and it really was kind of an aha moment. Looking back, you believed in me. You saw something. You initiated conversation. We sparked up a friendship, and you didn't have any reason to. You know, it wasn't, but you were a friend. And I think that especially from my childhood, and there was always a motive. Somebody always wanted something from me. But you didn't, you know what I mean? You genuinely just wanted me to do better, to learn things like you. And I feel like that, because you believed in me, is something that is missing. And that's the reason why, at least a point or a key, because a lot of these guys, man, they never had anybody believe in them. They had that same exact mentality fed to them. well, you're just gonna fuck up and go right back to prison. Why do you care? That's the reason why, I think, or not at least the direct, but I mean that definitely plays a part. When you tell somebody for so many years, oh, look at you, you're back, be back again next time when they EOS. What do you think that does to somebody? Sure, they're words, but you think that person doesn't think about that? That person doesn't think, damn, I am. He's right. I'm worthless. I'm gonna fuck this up, and then that, carefree, do whatever you want, get over, like that. That plays a part in it. Like a lot of guys, I think, at least in my opinion, if they had somebody believe in them, just legitimately, just take the time and believe, there would be a significant difference.
And a belief that you're not going to get it right away.
No,
and I want to share this anecdote. I was talking to a counselor who was the director of a huge drug program. And in this program, what they would do at the end of every week is they would put someone's name up on the board. Like, just like you're in elementary school, and put a star next to it. This guy is really, putting forth some effort. And it was the inmates that came up with the person. They would vote for the person to, like, hey, man, this guy is, like, really helping out.
Trying.
And sometimes the board, the 5 or 10 guys that would come up with the guys' names, sometimes they would vote on a guy who didn't deserve it at all. They would just put his name up there just to sort of, like, inspire the guy, like, hey, we see something inside you. And, like, the fact that we were coming up with that sort of psychological tactic to believe in someone, and the director of the program wasn't. And I'm walking by the board one day, and he looks up at the board, and he looks at a group of guys standing there, and he looks at the guy's name, and the guy was a known gang member, a leader of he's a blood leader. And he looks at the guy's name and he goes, how much did he pay to get on that board?
I remember.
And I was so heartbroken, and the guy heard him.
Yeah.
The guy heard him.
It was like, really? And like, that's the worst part, is when this guy is feeling, hey man, maybe, at least something. He's feeling something that is snatched away and like doubled in a negative way. Because this guy didn't do anything. He had nothing to do with it. These other guys were just trying to inspire him. Maybe you get something out of him. And it was those efforts completely dashed. And that is the mentality of not just the counselors, the guards. Like, it's just, to be believed in, I think, is a very powerful thing. And I know that that had a key in me, doing things a lot different this time.
So ironically, we make it through this program. We go some classes together, and you leave and you go to work release. Now in Florida, when you have under a year left, you can apply and you can go to work release.
And if your custody is low enough and you haven't made any,
no mistakes,
right, at all, and you've got a decent classification officer, that really counts. Some classification officers, oh sure, we'll put you in for it, and you are going to EOS from your camp. But if you had a decent classification
end of sentence
officer,
is EOS, by the way.
If you had a decent one, they would at least put you in. And you had two options. There's two routes you could do. You could pick two camps. You had your first choice and your second choice, and whenever one of them came available, that's where you would go to. Or you could put first available bed. And that means the next bed that comes open that they need a spot in, because they want people in work release. Remember, they're taking 55% of that check. You can get sent to whatever comes available. Now, I put Gainesville Work Release Center because it wasn't Sarasota. I didn't want to go back to anywhere that I had been. I wanted to start new. And I knew that I had at least 2 or 3 people that I had met from around this area. Like Lee, I had some, I'd never been here before, but I had some kind of, route. There was somebody, tethering that I could at least, hey man, what do I do here? So I ended up going to Gainesville Work Release. I leave before Lee does. I'm at Gainesville Work Release for a few months. I get a job. I get a second job. I was working 2 full-time jobs at Work Release. Man, I was at work more than I was at the Work Release Center. And here's the thing. Here's what they don't tell you. Is the first paycheck they can take 45% of. The second paycheck they can, or 55% of the second paycheck they cannot touch. They have already taken their allotted. They cannot. It's 55% or up to $220 was the cap, I think, or no, $320 was the cap. 55% or $320, whichever one was first. That's what they would take out of your check. And if you got a second job, they couldn't touch it. They could not charge you double. So I actually, that's why the reason why I was able to save up a fair bit this time in work release. Anyways, I'm there for a few months, and lo and behold, look what the cat drags in. Here comes old, totally hot himself, and he walks in, and boom, now we're at work release together.
Not only we're at work release together, I'm your bunkie.
Yes.
So, I mean...
Well, I paved the way for that, though.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, okay. He might have paid some people to get up my bunkie. But I'm there for a few weeks, and I haven't really ever shared this story with anybody, but it's one of the most insane experiences I've ever had in my life. But I'm there. Now, mind you, there's only a few people like Daniel that are going out to work every day. Some of these guys are buying sodas and crackers and chips and just selling them out of their room, because if I sell sodas and crackers and chips, I can keep my cash from these guys that are actually working. And if I go to work, the Department of Corrections is going to get 55% of my paycheck anyway. So these guys have sort of made up in their mind, I'm not going to work. There's a good bit of them that are sitting around, hanging out, partying all day, smoking cigarettes, whatever, smoking fake weed, and have their girls coming by to hang out. And so here's what's happened with the Department of Corrections and work release. It used to be that the Department of Corrections ran all the work release centers in the state of Florida. Well, private prisons came in, and these contractors bought many of the work releases. So now when you go to work release, there's like a security guard sitting at the front, and then there's guys in suits and ties who are sort of managing the whole deal and taking your money and that kind of stuff, right? Well, the Department of Corrections is upset about this. They want their jobs back. They want that contract back. They're at war with this. So I'm there for almost a week, and I have two jobs. I cook during the day.
Dave's barbecue, baby!
And I cook at night. So I have two jobs, and I'm riding my bike, 30 miles a day to
plug
get
in David's barbecue for free barbecue.
Plus. No, I worked at Adams.
Oh, no,
yeah.
It was Adams, it wasn't David.
So I worked at Ballyhoo's and Adams. So I had two jobs, and I'm just, sweating my junk off going to work every day, riding like 30 miles on a bicycle. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. Now, while you're there, they have an ankle monitor on you, and that's how they kind of track you. You have a little pager, and at any point, they can text you and say, hey, where are you? But they can see where you are with your ankle monitor. So I'm there a few weeks. I'm laying in my bunk. I don't have to work this morning. It's like 9 in the morning, and I get a little message on my pager, and it says, come to the officer station. So I go up there, and the guy comes around, and he goes, what's wrong with your ankle monitor? And I said, I don't know. And he comes around, looks at it, and he tugs on it, and he says, it's loose, and then he pulls it, and it just comes right off.
Now, all right, Lee is my bunkie. He was asleep. The man was in his bunk asleep when they paged him. Like, we had to wake him up and be like, hey, man, your pager's going off. Like,
right.
He was asleep. And they call him to his office and say something's wrong with your ankle monitor. And the guy tugs on it and pulls it off, and the thing snaps, and it comes off. And now, I will say this, though. That's not supposed to happen, but Lee's not the one that put it on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He didn't install the damn thing. Like, he didn't...
And I'm not absconding. You know where I am. You can see my little blip on your little radar screen.
You literally
I'm
paged
in
him to
bed.
come to the office.
You
There
asked
he
me to
is.
come there, and I'm there. So he pulls it off. It should just be a technical issue, a mechanical issue. So the director comes out, and he says, oh, Scott's got two jobs. He's fine. Just put another monitor on him, and we're going to charge you for it. It'll be $160. We'll charge you for it. And, I didn't want to argue about it, but I said, okay, just charge me for it. Take it out of my checks. There's nothing I can do about it.
It's either that or go back.
So that happened on a Wednesday. Go to work on Wednesday. I go to work on Thursday. On Friday, I come back to the center, and they say, pack your stuff. You're going back to prison. I had 8 months left. I had 8 months in the Department of Corrections that I was doing at work release. This is the only 8 months I have to save money, to get an apartment, to change my life, to not have to depend on anybody, and now they're snatching me up and they throw me back in prison. The first day I'm back in prison, they send me out on a Department of Transportation work squad out in Ocala. And so I had some people call Tallahassee and try to make calls for me, but of course nobody calls you back and no one figures anything out. It turns out that in that 3-week period, they were sending an average of 27 people back a week from the work release centers to the Department of Corrections. And here's what was happening.
They were trying to cripple the pockets of the private camp.
They were trying to not only cripple the pocket of the private camp, but show that, hey, these private camps, they can't even run it. Look how ineffective they are.
Guys.
And not only would they get their contracts back, but guess what? Even if they don't get their contracts back, guess who gets to do them free labor for their DOT contract in the meantime?
Not just that, guess who gets the dollars for housing an inmate every day? Because it's not the private institutions anymore. Now the money is back to the Department of Corrections. They don't get the high dollar from the paycheck, and we still get the, what is it, $600 a day? They get, or something like that?
Right.
And
it's just the idea that, like, there's this racket and you have such a tiny voice. Who's going to believe me? What am I going to post it on Facebook? Yeah. Is anyone rallying around for justice?
Yeah,
no, it's just no. Here we go again. The guy's ankle monitor. He's back in prison again.
He's trying to escape and abscond. Like what, dude?
So, you can see the problems inherent in the system, and
we're just pawns.
You actually made it through work release, and you get home. You're working a couple of jobs. And then let us know what happened with your family and your work life since you've been home.
Okay, so I was working 2 jobs while I was in work release. I worked at Texas Roadhouse. Big shout out to Texas Roadhouse and the staff that's there. Amazing staff, amazing food. I need to contact these establishments and see about getting some. Yeah. But anyways,
we're actually going to get a cease and desist.
That's what we're gonna get. No, I was working at Texas Roadhouse, and I was working at Celebrations Catering. I was doing that during the day. Now, I don't know, nobody's familiar with Gainesville. Most people that are listening to this aren't. But the work release facility is by the airport in Gainesville, which is like the north side, as North Gainesville as you can even get. And Texas Roadhouse is as far south in Gainesville as you can get. It is a 13-mile ride one way. From the work release center to Texas Roadhouse. I was riding that every day on top of going to a whole nother job, which is maybe a mile and a half. So I'd go mile and a half back, then 13 miles of Roadhouse. They would make me go to the work release center in between jobs. But anyway, so I'm working these jobs. I get released, and I had explained to both employers I was getting ready to be released, and I wasn't going to be keeping both jobs. Not just that I wasn't, I wasn't going to work for what I was being paid at the time either. So I gave them the option to, pay me right, and I would, can keep employment. So Texas Roadhouse paid me. They gave me a fair money increase, and I stayed working there for a while. I had met a girl that worked at Texas Roadhouse. Nothing romantic, nothing like that, but she had a spare bedroom. She'd rented an apartment, and she had a spare bedroom. She needed some money, so I rented a bedroom off of the girl. That was my first place here in Gainesville. Met some more people because I was free now. I had more time on my hands. I had a couple people that I had met at the Roadhouse, and a couple people that were from Gainesville at the Work Release Center, so I still had some contacts. And I just, I stayed. I made it work. I actually bought my first car when I got out. My very first, now, here's the thing, people. I was 31. Yeah, because I'll be 38. Yeah, I was 31, 32. No, 30. I was 30 when I was released from prison, because I'll be 38 this year. Almost 10 years now. I had never owned a car. I had never had a vehicle. I bought my first car, and then my second car within like 2 weeks. I had 2 cars. I saved up a good bit of money. I wasn't, paying for a house. I was only renting a room off of somebody. So I still, my income and, my bills, my overhead I was in a good spot. And I didn't have anyone making me feel like I owed them. I didn't have anybody trying to trying to swindle me. I didn't have anybody with any ulterior motives. I didn't have anybody with any guilt or negative influences. I just had the people that I met that I chose to, to have a continued relationship and to get to know, and that support system. I was miles and miles from any family member, but I felt more at home than I ever had. And I remember in the last episode I talked about, whenever I was young, I never felt home. I never felt like I belonged anywhere. And Gainesville was the first place that ever made me feel that way. Like I was cool. I was accepted here. I had
I don't want to say accepted. But.
Yeah, but no, and that's, I know we joke a lot, but I did. I felt okay. I felt safe. I felt like I could breathe. I didn't look over my shoulder. I didn't want to run. I didn't want to just run. Lee had this joke about us. Well, me. Well, we had this joke when we were in prison. It's like, anytime you see a cop,
just walk away.
Daniel says he will walk away. It doesn't matter if you're in the middle of a conversation. Anytime a guard comes around, Daniel will leave. And it's true. I will run.
I saw it happen. We would just be playing cards, and a cop would walk up to the table just to say hello, and Daniel would throw his cards down and just walk away. I'm like, you didn't even do anything.
I know I didn't.
Really suspicious.
No, but I don't even want the chance. I don't want any interaction. I don't yeah. So, but yeah, no, I'm out. But this is the only place that I haven't wanted to run. I haven't felt like I need to get the hell. I feel, there's so many good people here that I've met, and I'm about to get into that in a moment. I've relaxed. I am accepted. I've got family, and none of them are blood, but I've got family here. I've got people that love me, that have consistently, done nothing but help me improve the quality of my life on any aspect that it is. And my brother once told me, he said, every decision that you make, and this is after I got out of prison and, he had visited, because my brother stopped talking to me. After I went to prison the first time, he was so ashamed. I have a relationship with my brother. I talk to him a couple times a week. He tells me he loves me. I tell him he tells me he's proud of me. That is something I never experienced.
Can I pause you right there? Because I want to explore that idea for just a second, because I do want to hear about your relationships and where you're at now. But
that's right.
But I just wanted to, that idea that you love your brother, or you love your dad, or your mom, or your girlfriend, or whoever it is. But we sort of have a myth about unconditional love, that we want to be loved even for our flaws, even for our mistakes, and yet you have someone stop talking to you while you're making mistakes, and then you do good, you do better, you heal yourself, and then they say, okay, we're bringing you back into the fold. I can understand from their side of it. I can understand tough love. I think there's arguments to be made for, well, I'm not going to continue to enable you. I think definitely that's a thing. I understand that. But, this sort of PTSD tightrope that we walk of, you are not lovable unless you are this, or you are not lovable unless you do this. I just want you to sort of speak to that for a second.
I had experienced that a lot, and I think that's one of the reasons why I was so misguided, especially by my mom. Is I would feel like if I didn't, make her happy, and do some of the things, that she would suggest that I do, that, there would be, there would be punishments for it. I would be, and one thing I want to say is this. Love is unconditional. If a true love is unconditional, but that does not mean that you are not held accountable.
Yeah.
That does not mean that there are not standards. If you fuck up, and we all fuck up, but if you do, own it. Turn away from it, fix it, and move on. Better yourself. That is your chance. That is your sharpening moment right there, that you can be a better person or not. And that's what it takes. And that's like, it's small baby steps, but you always have to constantly improve the quality of your life, improve your character, improve, be very diligent. And guys like us, we have to be even more so.
So what do you suggest if, you're out there right now and let's say your son grows up and he has some legal issues, like, what do you suggest that your friends and family do in these times? How do they support you? How do they best support you?
Okay. That's a great question. I'm going to answer that real quick. I just thank you. I just want to just recap. So I get out of prison. I get released from work release. I stay here in Gainesville. I'm working. I meet a girl. And from the second that I saw her, I knew, and I know this is going to sound sappy, but the second that I saw her, I knew that I could easily spend the rest of my life just looking at her. That's how beautiful she was to me. And then the day that I met her, the first time seeing her, we were inseparable since. She fell in love with me right away. I have that effect.
Yeah, it's true.
Or like a bad rash, you just can't get rid of me. I don't know which one, maybe partially both. But anyways, no. She's beautiful. She's sweet. She's an empath. She cares. She's very, very loving. She's very patient. She's very understanding. And those are the three things that I needed most. And she gave me that in spades. She gave me two beautiful children. I have my daughter that's 4. Her name's Raylan. I have my son that's a year and a half. His name is Jackson Matias. And these guys like you are the reason why that I'm here, and that I had gotten the tools, and I had learned and gave myself the best chance that I could. And I meet this woman, and I feel like the only reason why she even talked to me is because I had been affected and trying to change, because she would not have talked to the person that I was when I went into prison. She would not have. Nobody would like that guy. I don't like that guy. But the person that I am today, I can look at myself in the mirror, and I'm okay with what I see. Sure, I need work. Everybody needs work. You're never perfect. But am I leagues and bounds from where I was? Abso-fucking-lutely. And I am so thankful for it. But it wasn't just me. I had somebody initially to believe in me, to point me in the right direction. I took the effort because I was tired. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to come back to prison again. I made some decisions. I cut some things off. Some toxic people that no matter what your relationship is to them, just because they're blood doesn't mean that you owe them or that you have to stay in a bad situation. You are responsible for your life. Did I have some shitty circumstances? Absolutely. But I did. I had some people believe in me, and I did some work, and but it wasn't the prison system. The prison system, I am a very, very low statistic. But it's because of all these things. Somebody believed in me. I took some classes and learned some different things to do. I got out. I went away from, and I cut off the negative environments and the negative relationships. And I worked. I invested in me. Nobody was going to be there to help me out, but I wasn't going to cheat myself. I didn't care if I had to eat ramen noodle for a week or two. I wasn't going to do anything that could jeopardize my freedom or make any of the people that had been believing in me shun me. I didn't want to disappoint anyone because I knew I had people that counted on me. Then I met my lady, I had my kids, and now it's second nature. Now, why do I get up in the morning? Why do I not do that? Because I've got two wonderful little creatures that are my blood. I've got a woman that loves me. I've got a support system and friends that all care about me. That at the drop of a hat, 3 o'clock in the morning, I could call any one of them, and they would come and pull me out of a ditch if need be. Sure, I'd get shit talked to, and I get railed for a while, which rightfully, if you're in a ditch at 3 o'clock in the morning, you should. But it's just it's an example that I have someone to call. And for no other reason than they want to see me do good. They believe in me, and that all those things are key. These guys in prison, they need to feel like somebody believes in them. If all they hear is that Nobody cares. You'll be back. You know, we're not gonna teach you anything new. You're just gonna sit here for a while. Sure, you're gonna pick up some trash on the side of the road. We're gonna make money off of it, and then you're gonna go right back to that, that toxic relationship or that negative environment or whatever the hell it is. So you need somebody that believes in you. Then you need somebody you need programs, something that's going to teach you new ways and new habits and new money making, I hate to say it, but like new money making schemes. Like, there's hustles. Like me and Lee, actually, before we got in the air, we were talking about, trading and cryptocurrency and stuff. And like, if you would have told me that I was going to be discussing cryptocurrency trading, 10 years ago,
You would have gone, what the fuck is cryptocurrency?
I'd be like, the fuck is cryptocurrency? You know what I mean? Like,
what, are you, a time machine?
But like just, you need to relearn. And that's what I did. I grew up in a negative environment. I grew up, with a person that I trusted to guide me and I looked at most and I looked up to most was guiding me in a way that had me, it had me develop a tragic skewed, take on things. Like things that I thought were acceptable or right were not. And there's a lot of things that are wrong, but I'd say when you lock a guy up and you just put him in a box and you don't teach him anything and you don't talk to him and when you do, you tell him you'll be right back and it's nothing. What do you expect? What do you think is going to happen? And that's, I'm glad that you guys let me share my story. I hope, this did something for somebody or somebody, learned something or took something away. And if you're out there and you just got out of prison and you're listening, you can do this. You don't have to go back. I'm like, if no one has told you, you can do this. Like, you don't have to do drugs. You don't have to do crime. You can survive. Is it going to be comfortable? Initially, no. But nothing worth doing is going to be easy. So just know that I believe in you, because if I can be here right now, anybody can. You just have to try. And it means cutting off negative relationships. Don't go back to negative environments. Learning new and healthy habits. Learning new ways to deal. On a side note, one thing that was very, very, very rough for me is I lost my mom. I know I gave a lot about her past. And was she the perfect mom? No. She was a single mother of 3. I'm not making any excuses for her because she fucked up a lot. And I had to go back and correct things. But I lost her almost 2 years ago. And that was the hardest thing that I had to deal with since I've been out. It was rough because for good or for bad, she was the only parent I ever knew. And I miss her a lot. And I miss the chance not to be able to maybe teach her some of the things that I learned that made me a better person. Because she had a lot of demons, and those demons caused her to take her own life. Intentionally, but I wish that I had the chance. I was still, this is almost 2 years ago. I was still on shaky legs. I had just had my daughter. I had my son on the way. And I was busy living my life, but you don't have to go back, guys. You don't. Just change things, But that was the closest call that I had, and it took a toll on me. But I'm not back. I didn't go back to prison. I didn't downward spiral. I didn't set the fucking world on fire. I used the tools that I had people around me that I knew loved and cared and understood the situation, and I'm a better man for it. And if I can survive that, and I'm feeling pretty confident today. And guys, you can too. Just change things. If you have a bad result, change everything about your life. Try something new.
Thank you, Daniel. I really appreciate you joining us. Seriously, it's important, I think, for our listeners, for people who want to be active in criminal justice reform, for people who, just want to sort of hear the ins and outs and the ups and downs of this. And I think the takeaway message there was it takes a few elements, and the core elements have to be met by outside elements. So that, what I mean by that is the core inside elements, which is you've got to take the right step forward, even in the face of daunting circumstances, even in the face of abject poverty and bigotry and prejudice and racism and addiction and mental health, you still have to, at the end of the day, say, I am worth it. You have to take a step forward. And sometimes you're going to be telling yourself, I'm worth it, when you don't even believe it. You can find all the evidence to the contrary.
Fake it till you make it.
Right, but you have to fake it till you make it. And, you know, it takes that element of saying, I'm worth a better life. Every time I put drugs and alcohol into my system, every time I engage in abusive behavior, abusive relationships, I go, this goes against the thing that I tell myself 10 times a day, which is I'm worth a good life. If that level of self-care and self-belief is met, fortunately, by someone who believes in you, then great things can happen.
Guys, you know, I know
girls.
and ladies, you know, that if you're out there and you just got released and you don't know what to do, here's, and every decision you make, and message us, please reach out, you know, but even if you don't have that opportunity, there's a small thing that you can do. Every decision that you're going to make, the smallest thing to the largest thing, ask yourself and be real with yourself, because you'll know if you're lying. Is this going to improve the quality of my life, or is it going to take away from it? And if it is not improving the quality of your life, it's not worth doing, and you can't afford it. And that would be my best advice, is if you don't have anything, you start there. Every decision you make, and play the tape through. You know, if I do this, is it going to, and where is it going to lead you? And if it's not going to improve the quality of your life, don't do it.
Thank you, Daniel. Good luck to you. We believe in you. Thanks for listening to
Thanks for
Uncarcerated. Make sure you download, rate, and subscribe. Hit us up on the Twitter page at Uncarcerated. And if you'd like to email us with your story, or if you've been affected by this, mlscottblog@gmail.com. This has been Uncarcerated.